I was heading home on a late night flight. The cabin was dark and quiet when suddenly a cry broke out, a baby's cry. I had seen the baby when I made my way to my seat. I knew that this could happen. And I was surprised that I didn't feel annoyed at the baby or the baby's parents, as I might have expected, as I have sometimes before. Instead, I felt a sense of kinship to them. I, too, was a baby once. All of us on the plane were once a baby, and all of us had cried like this before. And then the feeling and the connection went deeper, and I realized that there was actually a small part of me, a vulnerable part of me, that was crying too. I was crying out of feelings of powerlessness and fear and frustration. This particular flight, this night, it was right after the Supreme Court reversed Roe v. Wade. I felt this wailing in my soul, and I have felt it so many times since 2022. I am grieving so much. I'm grieving what I thought my future would be, what I thought the present would be. I'm afraid that things will get worse. And at my lowest moments, there's a small, vulnerable part of me that says, what is the point? Why keep going when we are losing? In the same way that each of us on that plane was once a crying baby, I know that every religious leader, activist, and ancestor that I admire has felt this feeling too. I'm sure some of you maybe have as well. The feeling that comes when what we know is just and right meets resistance. At times like this, I turn to my community. I turn to those of you who have felt these feelings, and rather than collapsing in despair, you push back. Our world is full of beings who, rather than giving up, innovate, persist, and come together to keep alive what is most important. The philosopher and civil rights legend Grace Lee Boggs said, "Most Americans have a very short-range idea of history." They don't realize that mass production only began about 100 years ago. They don't realize that capitalism has only existed for a few hundred years. They don't realize that there's been a huge evolution of culture and paradigm shifts in everything, in government, in education, in work down through the ages, and it's that lack of a long-range view that can make you think that when change happens, when you see ruins and disintegration, it is the end of life. Grace goes on to say, one of the things that I learned from my father is that a crisis is both a danger and an opportunity. And how you take advantage of the opportunity of the crisis rather than becoming despairing is something we're facing all the time, particularly at this time. The opportunity we have now to reimagine everything, to reimagine work, to think of it not just as being productive of things, but of well-being, to think of governance in a different way, to think of education in a different way. What an opportunity. What a time to be alive. Grace said this in 2015 when she was 100 years old. A lot has happened since 2015, and not quite as much as all that happened in our world during the 100 years of Grace Lee Boggs' life. Now is not the time to give up. It's okay to hear the part of ourselves that is crying and to offer it comfort and care. But we must also acknowledge that our sadness, anger, and fear will only increase if we give up now. So today I thought I would share with you a few stories that have been motivating me to keep going and never give up on the causes that I fight for. I was on a boat on the Chagres River in Panama when I learned about the Azteca ants. Azteca ants have a symbiotic relationship with cecropia trees. The trees provide them with a home and food, and in return, the ants protect the trees from other insects and plants that want to harm them. In 2020, during the early days of the pandemic, a bored teenager named Alex accidentally shot a cecropia tree with his slingshot, making a hole in the trunk. The next day when he returned, the hole was gone. Alex decided to make this an experiment. He gathered a group of his friends and they strategically started drilling holes in the trees to see what would happen. And they learned that the Aztec ants didn't just protect the trees, they actively repaired them. Within 2.5 hours, the Aztec ants had repaired significant portions of the damage, and within 24 hours, the holes were completely repaired. Their research showed that not every ant in the colony worked to fix the holes, but those that did were not deterred when new holes appeared. With each new hole, they worked together to repair what had been broken and to protect the trees they loved. Like the Azteca ants, we can protect what we love, and we have the ability to repair what has been broken. In 2011, Hurricane Irene was a Category 3 storm that caused widespread damage and destruction in the Caribbean and along the east coast of the United States, leading to the deaths of 49 people and costing $13.5 billion. During the hurricane, a group of scientists were concerned when they saw that a small migrating shoebird they were tracking, a whimbrel they had named Chinquapin, was flying directly into the eye of the storm where winds were gusting at 110 miles per hour. We were walking on pins and needles hoping that the bird made it through, one of the scientists said. We had to wait a full 48 hours to see the next set of data points. When 48 hours passed, they were shocked. Little Chinquapin had survived the storm and was alive and well in the Bahamas. With determination and grace, like Chinquapin, we can make it through the chaos of this moment. About a year ago, I started following Renaud online. Renaud is an 11-year-old girl living in Gaza who loves to cook. With the help of her mom and members of her community, she gathers ingredients she needs to make short instructional videos that she posts online, sharing her favorite recipes with the world. Sometimes she has all the ingredients to make her favorite dishes, like falafel. Other times she's sharing ways to use the rations that she's receiving to make easy cakes, hot chocolate, and sandwiches to share with her friends. Renaud has been out of school since the war began. She is scared. In some of the videos, you see her standing in front of rubble. But she does not want to give up on her dream. She has 1.2 million followers and counting from all over the world. She recently posted photos of a cake she baked with a one-word caption: hope. For over 100 years now, American chestnut trees have been dying. The trees that used to live for 500 to 800 years now live for 10 to 15 years. There used to be so many American chestnut trees, it was said that a squirrel could travel the entire East Coast by hopping from one American chestnut to another. But in 1904, a forester at the Bronx Zoo noticed that the chestnut tree's leaves were turning brown and falling to the ground. A fungus was killing the trees, and despite many efforts, there seemed to be no cure. Susan Frankel wrote in her book, American Chestnut, the blight killed between 3 and 4 billion trees. Enough trees to fill 9 million acres, enough trees to cover Yellowstone National Park 1,800 times over. Enough trees to give every person living at that time 2 trees. Every person on the planet living at that time 2 trees. We've been trying to figure out how to save the American chestnut from this blight for more than 100 years. We're still trying. Blair and Mary Carbaugh, a couple living just outside of Danville, Pennsylvania, they are still trying. Planting 1,000 trees on their land, Blair says that of those 1,000 they planted, only 12 have survived. But he and Mary are sticking with it. When I heard this story in 2022, Blair was 91 years old and Mary had just turned 84. This is a story about people coming together willing to try something that might not work, and if it does work, it will take a long, long time, longer than most of us have. But the Carbaughs and many like them don't mind that. They think it's still worth a try. Sarah Fern Fitzgibbons, the director of restoration at the American Chestnut Foundation, says Blair and Mary Carbaugh are not the only ones who refuse to give up on the American chestnut. A lot of people that I work with are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, sometimes 90s. They were the ones who saw species decline during the original pandemic. And they're really the ones who are saying, I'm doing this for my grandkids, I'm doing this for my great-grandkids. That's what she said, that's what Sarah shared. This is a 100, 200, 300 plus year vision. And we have to keep passing on that hope and love for healthy forests. Some of the causes we are fighting for, they are hundreds of years ahead of us. They are many generations past us. But we have to keep passing on hope and love for a better future. Our ancestors did it for us, and we can do it too. One more story. Before the United States Supreme Court ruled on Roe v. Wade in 1973, it was almost impossible for many Americans to get abortion care. This led many people capable of pregnancy to seek whatever care they could find, often leading to serious complications and death. One coroner in 1951 estimated that in his career alone, he saw 1,200 women who died from not getting the medical care they needed. Women, especially poor women, and women of color were dying at alarming rates across the country without legal protection, and many felt scared to take any action. But others took action anyway. Clergy from around the country, church ministers, including Unitarian-Universalist ministers, along with rabbis and even some Catholic priests and nuns, created the Clergy Consultation Service. Led by Reverend Howard Moody of the Judson Memorial Church in New York, the leaders of the Clergy Consultation Service traveled around the country meeting with other religious leaders in church basements to educate them about how to join the cause and to strategize within their communities. They quickly realized that they would also need to find a way to inform the public that clergy were available to support people seeking abortions. The group placed an ad in the New York Times with their phone number stating, "We believe it is our religious duty to give aid and assistance to all women with problem pregnancies." When someone called the hotline number, they would hear a recording that would inform them of the names and numbers of religious leaders in the area who were available for consultation. Once a call was received, an in-person meeting would be arranged during which clergy would provide spiritual support, and if the woman chose to pursue an abortion, they would connect her to a safe clinic and plan her travel. Each site that the women went to were vetted by members of congregations who would go posing as women seeking abortions to make sure that those who they'd sent there would be treated with kindness and respect. Many of these clergy also had the support of their congregations, but there were some who did not. And occasionally, for clergy who were a part of this service, they lost their jobs. And for some of them, they couldn't get new jobs, and it was the end of their career as a congregational minister. While there were many reasons to be afraid and discouraged, the clergy felt affirmed by the sheer number of people calling them each week. There was such a great need. Along with their counseling support, clergy used their pastoral power to advocate in hospitals with lawmakers and by writing to local newspapers. They consistently argued that the legislation restricting abortion access was discriminatory because of how it disproportionately impacted the poor and people of color. One minister in Missouri, William Kirby, estimates that he helped 3,000 people obtain safe abortions. In 1972, the year before Roe v. Wade was passed, there were more than 600 clergy consultation locations across the country. The clergy destroyed their records, so we'll never really know how many people they served. But it's pretty astounding. It's one person served 3,000, and there were 600 sites across the country. You can think about how big those numbers are. Today, the clergy consultation service persists. They are now called the Religious Community for Reproductive Choice, and they provide clinic blessings, education, and reproductive ethics, and financial support to people seeking reproductive care. They did not give up. We will not give up. The attacks that we are seeing on immigrants, on trans and non-binary people, federal workers, scientists, healthcare workers, student activists, reproductive rights, honestly, most of the things that we care about, most of the people we care about, it's discouraging, it's demoralizing, it's scary. But we cannot give up now. Whatever causes you to cry or rage, that's the cause you need to keep fighting for. It's hard to keep fighting when you're tired. It's hard to keep fighting when you're scared. But as we've heard from some of these stories today, from the story of Betty Robinson, even from our story during the time of all ages, it's worth it to keep fighting. Let's work like the Azteca ants, rebuilding together what has been broken in the foundation of our society. Let's remember little Chenquapin and our ability to navigate through virulent storms. Like Renaud, let us use whatever we can to make hope. And like Blair and Mary Carbaugh, let's continue to plant a seed that will someday survive and prosper. Let ours be the story that inspires future generations to never give up on what is just and right and true. Our ancestors are giving us the baton. Let's run it to the next generation. May it be so. Amen.